So thank you so much, everybody, for joining today on this month's webinar, which we've chosen to call From Unknown to Understood. Here we go. So I'll start by sort of just introducing who I have joining me today, and then we'll go through some slides talking about sort of going from the process of unknown to known, what that means. And then, of course, end up with, talking a bit about Delogue and the supplier module. But first, I just want to say that we, of course, as always, have the Q&A. So if you have any questions to me or my guests today, just pop them into the Q&A and I'll read them aloud either during the session or in the end. So that's it. So first, I just want to introduce Anja. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I think if you could just, introduce yourself and your role at Magasin.
Yes, thanks for having me. So yes, my name is Anja and I sit as a CSR Specialist in Magasin du Nord's private label, Magasin du Nord collection.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Anja. Yes, and I am also Anja. I work at Delogue, the PLM system here in Copenhagen, and I am a CMO at the company, an ESG expert coming from the industry and having known Anja for a long time in our networks and everywhere else in the industry. So I think it's going to be a great session talking to you about all of this. So if we dive into sort of the first slide here, because I think we've been talking about for a couple of years now, at least, or even more, that the fact that we are going sort of away from the fact that, supplied by supplier or locally sourced and so on. When I started in the industry from 15 years ago, that was how it was done, that we could just basically write locally sourced. And then the supplier, the direct supplier you had contact with could sort of just find the trimmings and find the fabric, and you weren't really, it wasn't really common that you had to know where that came from. And I think that's sort of very much the change that has happened now, is that we really need to know much more about our suppliers, and not just our direct suppliers, but of course also the ones that deliver everything else that is in the bill of material. So I want to start off, Anja, by asking, so this supplier chain mapping and supplier management, when do you think that became sort of a real priority for you in Magasin?
Well, I have to say, luckily, when I started in Magasin, it was a very, solid base. They had created about knowing tier 1 factory, which when other places might not even be the standard, where you have like a buying house or an agent. So there we already, had that in place. But we started to really work hands-on with it a year ago, where we built the methodology of the bill of material, and also ask ourselves, what do we need to know from which partner, or what part of a bill of material or of a supply chain is relevant for us. Because as we know, the supply chain is not only going downwards, it's going down into the side in all different kind of directions. So it was already a task for us to really define what information do we need, because it's a lot of data, and you also have to know what you do with it, because it takes a bit of energy to receive it and maintain it. So you should actually also be able to use it.
Yeah. And was there anything sort of in particular that triggered the fact that you wanted to know more within Magasin? Was there anything that triggered that?
Yeah, well, first, I think luckily we have in our DNA the wish of working as responsible as possible. And that also means that we have the dream of monitoring working conditions further down the supply chain, also monitoring environmental impacts of partners further down the supply chain. That's part of the DNA. But what of course also gave an extra thick line underneath is the legislation coming on. Forced labor or the eco-design. We don't know yet exactly, as we all know, what will be the definition, but we think it will make it way easier to really measure impact when we know where our product has been going through.
And I think I think everybody is probably more or less in the same situation as you explain here. So I think the overwhelmed feeling is probably out there, I think. Can you sort of, did it feel overwhelming to you, or did you sort of, how was it in the beginning when you sort of could see that this is where we need to go?
Yes, I think like everyone, we were also really overwhelmed. We still are overwhelmed because things are also shifting constantly from just starting with the CSRD, where it really took long time to figure out, are we in scope or are we not in scope? And here we have to say that we have maybe a little bit of a special position because we belong to a big company, but our private label is still a sort of small private label. So that's a little bit of a funny thing to turn. We are a small team of 9 people working in private label. So that was really overwhelming. It still is. But we actually decided to, again, look at what is important for us. Of course, we have the legislation, but what's the wish for our brand or for Magasin's brand? What shall be a part of the core identity, where ethical sourcing always has been an important topic. And we added climate, and to really dive into the topic of climate, we came to the conclusion that transparency is as important as it is for ethical compliance. So that helped us a little bit to stay by ourselves and prioritize in a way that makes sense. And we decided that for us, we want to build, like we call it, data highways. So we don't know yet which data we have to have, and what we want to have, we know, but not what we have to have. But for us, it was important to build a road where we can receive and maintain data without sitting in our Excel files, because we started in Excel as well. And that was a bit of a tough one.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I think diving into, if we take the next slide in terms of, as you say, the legislations, because I think that's definitely something that people are trying to grasp. How is that impacting, my job and my company? So if we dive in, I know that it's impacting your company, but how is it impacting sort of your daily life, daily work life, as a CSR responsible?
Yeah, like I said, it's really it does affect it a lot, because you have to stay updated all the time. Suddenly there comes new small bits of legislation. What do we know now? What is a final decision? What has been put in stone? Because we also all know that we are, mostly of us, developing collections that will land in 2027. So we already are pressured in time in this industry, and then knowing the requirements, of course, we have some time for implementing, but we know that this is a bit of a tricky topic. So we really try to stay up to date, following organizations, multi-stakeholder organizations, or unions, not unions, what do you call them? Dansmål og Tekstil, for example. As business associations, to really get narrowed down what is important for our products and get the first information out. And this is a really vague line, because there's a lot of reports coming out, and they are heavy, and they really take some energy to go through. So we decide to attend a lot of networks where we speak with the people, going to Brussels to really understand what that means for us, instead of reading. We are also not legal experts, right? So reading those legislations by itself can be tough. So I think exchange is super important in different networks to really make a common understanding what is required by legislation.
I think that's really useful as well for people also listening in, that one thing is sitting down and reading everything. And I think, as you said, nobody of us working in the industry are lawyers or know necessarily the language that they are writing in. So joining in the organizations or networks that we can to sort of learn off of each other. Did you understand it that way? Okay, I understand it this way, and so on, to get help in our daily life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it becomes a bit of a confusion if you don't have that.
Yeah, and even here in Magasin, we have lawyers, we have our own legal
Yeah.
department, but lawyers are also not textile experts. So they
No.
can read the law, but we together somehow have to figure out what that means for our products, because
Yeah.
they can somehow help me to translate the legal language.
Yes.
But yeah, they don't have the insight in how could that actually relate to a
Yes.
textile product. So it needs a
Yes.
lot of collaboration in different ways.
Definitely. And I think, just out of curiosity, because I think a lot of us are hearing that, customers and consumers expect something, but are you already feeling that, or how is it feeling for Magasin and in your private label? Are they having, are there expectations out there?
Yeah, well, we are also owned by someone else,
Mhm.
a big German retailer group. So, of course, there is some expectation that way, but there is also expectation from our customers.
Mhm.
We have not yet been that far to really measure on surveys how our customers actually respond, or what kind of questions they have. Of course, we got the normal question through support functions, and we try to train our staff through apps on the floor so they can answer questions. But I think in the price segment and the house we live in, we come from, it's very normal that people assume that things are just, how you say, in order.
Yeah.
I think Magasin also has the reputation that it's a house you can trust,
Mm.
that products you buy is something you can trust. And that puts some responsibility for us as a brand, because we know that our customer comes to Magasin because it is an old heritage of Denmark, and it has this reputation that, yeah, things are in order and in place and produced in a responsible way when you go to Magasin. So
Yeah. Makes sense.
that already gives some.
Yeah, definitely. So if we talk about sort of the common challenges out there, because I think that's also something that I think when we speak to our customers and people in the industry, it seems like it's basically the same challenges that they have out there. And I think if we could dive into, maybe get a bit of inspiration also for your common challenges, or how you've sort of come about it. And the challenges are still there. So I think it's not to say that you figured out a solution for them. But if we start off with the data structure, so to speak, what did you have sort of a data structure before, and now after having looked into what's necessary? How have you sort of shifted
Yeah.
in the data structure?
Yeah, we have, like I said before, we had a lot of data in Excel. And
Mhm.
that was for me super frustrating, sitting in a brand, because my colleagues, they are in the calendar, they are in the role, they know exactly what product is done at what time. But when you sit with CSR or ESG, you are not in the same role. So it was already really, how you say, tricky to match my Excel data about factories. Okay, which factory? I have a partner, a buying house, and they have 5 different factories they use for 5 different product groups. Making the match on each collection, knowing which product is done at which factory, which also helps me to work a bit more, how you say, streamlined. And when I ask for audits and certificates and scope certificates and test report and all of that kind of stuff, it helps really to have the data in Delogue for us, because that's where our products live, and we try to connect as much there. And it also helps our partners, of course, that we look at the same source of truth and we talk the same common language. We look at the same certificate. Not a colleague from them has sent something that the other colleague didn't know, and it's not the right one, and we have updated it, and all of those things that can happen. So from a very manual Excel file, who is the factory, what certificates do they have, what standards do they have, like environmental standards, for example, which kind of audits do they have, up to, there is a corrective action plan of the audit. How do we follow along? That has been in many different Excel sheets, and we still have Excel, of course, for some follow-up, but everything that's product related and at supplier related in the first run, we can put into Delogue now, which helps to streamline the data.
And how has it sort of been? Because I mean, much of what you're saying, and I can also hear from everybody in terms of the supplier collaboration, that they are a very big part of the structuring of how we get the data and the documentation and so on. How has that been, sort of the change from going from a way of Excel sheets and all of that to trying to structure it more and have it in one place? Are the suppliers, is it easy for them to get on board, or are they still finding it difficult?
No, I think it made it easier, but of course, it's still, how to say, depending on the supplier, some can still have challenges in to really understand. And we actually see it's not much the factories that are producing our goods that are having issues, because luckily, I think the industry has really moved, and many factories are met with many requirements of many different brands, as we know. So I think well, like I said, for us, we choose factories that are audited, that are certified, and they know what they are doing. It becomes tricky when there might be a buying house or an agent or a non-certified trader or something in between, because they can actually be shaky. What is the requirement when I produce a GRS certified goods? Can we do it when they are not certified? All those sort of things. So I think that's where we use energy for some of our partners to really have them aligned and say what is possible, what is not possible. And on the same time, of course, they are a huge help because they have the direct contact to the factory.
Yeah.
And they can help us to tackle, especially if we have some corrective action plans on audits. They can help us being on the floor and speak to the factory owner and do some follow-up checking for us, which is really nice.
That's really good. And I think you also mentioned in terms of the products, and I think you and I have also had some conversations about the products and having the products in one place and so on. So I just put up this slide because it's sort of the main things that we're also focused on when we talk to the customers of Delogue and so on, in terms of, it starts from the product. It starts by, you need to know what your product consists of, what is in the bill of material. You can't map something you don't know, basically. And it's not enough anymore only to map the one product. It's also a necessity that you map what's in the product. So how can you sort of elaborate on how has that work been? I know you've been in Delogue, you've also in Delogue, prior to when you started, but I know that you've also talked about having more products in Delogue, and that process has been a priority for you. Can you maybe elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, because here in Magasin we have different groups, especially different textile groups. So we have, of course, apparel, women, men, kids, accessories. But Magasin also has, for example, homeware, or we have something that we call ready-made, where we actually see a product at a supplier which we really like, and we kind of put the label on. That has been driven in a big organization. Like, we are in many different ways because we are split it up into having a whole buying team for home, if we look at Magasin as a department store. So some products have been like developed from people that have roles as a buyer in Magasin, as a buyer for a retail store. So all the data was at the partner. And when I, for example, just needed to get an insight on possible trims for, let's say, accessory that was ready-made. It was a really long conversation forward and backward, and why is now someone else asking, what do you need it for? And I actually don't know, and all of that. And for us, the legislation also helped to really give a push and say we have to have, when we talk about textile products, we have to have exactly the same data, and we have to store it in one way, because we know we will have to send the data further, either to reporting tools, to climate calculation tools, CO2 emission tools, to digital product passport solution. We will have to have the data streamlined and accurate in the same logic for all different kind of products. So what we have focused on a lot was, for example, onboarding our home category to Delogue, which we have now nearly finalized, and the ready-made products to get them in Delogue as well, even though we might not use it that much under the development phase because the product is already more or less developed, but we can ensure to have the same data like we need on all kind of products. So
yeah, makes sense. So basically having, all of the products in one place ensures that you can continue, your work, and others can continue their work because you have it in one place and from sort of one get-go that all of your products are there.
Yeah, and it helps, of course, also a lot to support the other teams because, like I said, I sit in a team with 9 people, but products have been made under Magasin brand in other teams as well. And they need some help with the ESG or the CSR, the certificates and all of it. And if we really start to look on the web shop and say, what kind of product is it? Then it becomes, it's a little bit of a long way to really get as fast help. So when they are in Delogue, we have like one source where I can help them follow along the collection and ask some questions or go in dialogue with the supplier directly. So I can actually also take some work pressure away from colleagues that are having a total different role than CSR.
Yeah, because I also think that that's something that's on top of a lot of minds in product development, whether you be designer or a product developer, is that having these tech solutions that you suddenly have to be onboarded to, and getting you perhaps away from how you would normally do it, can also be a struggle. And implementing it can be, I think I can hear from you as well, that's also a challenge, to implement it and ensure that it's the reason is this, but it is a bit of a big work for you now. But so I think, saying that you are helping them, I think that must have been, and making it easier at least for them to implement, right?
Definitely. It took us really some time. Like I say, we are just in the final stage of having them. And that's, of course, where we sit in Magasin. It's a big company. There's a lot of different tasks going on that are normally not happening in a private label task. But what also really helped is when we actually showed the colleagues the platform, it went up for them. Like if we just have collection overviews, that's something that took a lot of time before, because they had to collect the pictures and everything from all different kind of sources and different kind of formats and put it into one form. And already just showing, we started with that like a little kickstart and say, look, you just press a button and you have a full overview of the collection. There we already got them. And when I told them that I'm following along all the time without they have to add me CC on emails, everything, and I can jump in when a scope certificate needs to be renewed or when the wrong label is placed for the certificate or all of that, I can follow along, and we can find possible mistakes before they actually happen with my expertise, and they can focus on their expertise, making a product that feels and looks really nice and has the right price. So that's a nice collaboration.
That makes it easier for both parties, right? To get what you need.
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. And I think we've already touched a bit upon this, but I also wanted to, because I think that, half of Delogue is the suppliers in our platform. And for you as well, and for everybody who's working in creating beautiful products, it's all about having a collaboration with your suppliers, because they make the products. But now they've also gotten sort of a an added layer, so to speak, on top of just creating beautiful products. It's also about ensuring that the data behind all of those products can be with the products. There is a lot of different requirements that the dear suppliers are not necessarily both used to, and they might not even know where to start. So I was thinking that maybe you could sort of going from the topic of today with the unknown to the known, how has that been for you to sort of get the suppliers from a CSR perspective? How, getting the suppliers to understand the requirements that lies on them?
Yeah. Well, one thing I can say up front is it doesn't work by email. So we really, we sat down face to face with the suppliers and went through the requirements, make them understand, and really have a dialogue about it. And that doesn't happen that much via email. And we also, when we made all our plans with what kind of extra data, bill of material, or the mapping itself, what do we need? We also made a realistic timeline, because as we know, when we go to our suppliers, they have to go to their supply chain, and you sometimes purchase fabrics from huge mills. So even if our supplier knocks on the door and said, "Oh, I need some extra information about that," it's not always that they get it right away. So having the respect that also our suppliers really have to do sometimes some investigation, collecting the data, because they are not yet in Delogue, right? The partners further down the supply chain. So they also really have to find a way of structuring it to put it into Delogue, and the one has to respect that also takes some time, and it takes a lot of dialogue to really be clear on what the request is or what the expectation is.
Exactly. And I also think that's some of the things that I've, you reflect on it yourself, because when we talk about having the legislation and the requirements coming and companies asking for data there and there, that is sort of a fire drill kind of situation with all of the brands, that we suddenly think, oh, we have to find all of this data. Where is find me all of this data that I need to deliver, that I need to be compliant. But we're basically just also asking the suppliers to do the same. So I think the approach of preparing them with, because we would like to be prepared as well in the industry, right? A brand would like to be prepared, saying, I know you're going to ask about data in X amount of months. Maybe I could be prepared with at least half of it, because then I'll be more ready than you asking in 6 months, and then I have to backtrack. And we're basically, if we don't prepare the suppliers and the work, we're doing the same to them and asking them to backtrack something they don't. And in some cases, I would assume that it won't necessarily be possible for them to backtrack it in that way.
No, I think the same. And I think here also, again, really networking is super important, because, like we say, we also know that the suppliers have many different customers of us. And if we all somehow, how to say, have a different opinion on legislation and what is data required legislation, it's going to be a little bit chaotic for them, because the alignment is super, super important. And it really helps to network also with other brands and exchange information, go in different groups of networking, different webinars, all of that, to really have a common understanding of it, because it's so new for the legislation part, and it's also really new for the textile industry.
It is, yeah, exactly. So if we sort of sum up in terms of making it work in practice, what I'm hearing you saying, and what I've also put down as well here, is progress over perfection. I think that's we won't get it right from the get-go. It has to be a progress, especially working with suppliers, working internally, everybody in the whole company, and the whole process of creating products has to be, aligned, as I'm saying here as well, that they internally have to have an alignment. And then, of course, trying at least to keep it simple. I know that, I mean, it can be a bit of a, not an easy task to make it simple, but at
Yeah.
least trying to, because it's on top of a very busy schedule
Yeah.
that all of these things are coming. So a simplicity makes it maybe a bit easier, so to speak.
Yeah.
So maybe can you, is there any sort of examples you can give for how you've maybe tried to align it internally? You already mentioned with the suppliers, but what about internally
Yeah.
with your team?
Yeah, we have for our CSR strategy that we have just laid for the next 3 years. We also, of course, did the workshop and really decided because I need the designers and I need the sources as well because I'm not a product expert. That's them. So there again, it needed a lot of dialogue to say, okay, what is important for us when we look at the bill of material? Do I have to have the supplier of the sewing thread? Is that important? Or do I kill myself by asking by that and the button supplier and the zipper supplier and the fabric supplier and the padding supplier? Or do I say I look at the product at once and this takes a lot of volume, that's a big part of the product. With my expertise I think there could be some risks in that part of the product. So let's focus on that and then we can add on top. So again, it really needed that we sit together, look at our products, look at our suppliers. We do that every season where we have to make the general product safety regulation evaluation. We also look at it and say, okay, is there any risks in our supply chain? Is there any extra information we should know? Are we having anything left made by supplier, or do we actually got the information for all that we decided for us is important now? And don't go into the nitty gritty and think about the sewing thread supplier at the beginning. Really make it what is important for you, for your product, and for you as a brand, where you think that could have a positive or negative impact that you want to know more about.
That's a really good, very, very good suggestion and recommendation, I think. Speaking into all three of them, I think, because we can overdo everything, and then everybody gets overwhelmed. And the overwhelmedness is something that we really need to try and not have in a very busy schedule anyhow.
Yeah.
So just touching upon, we launched the Delogue supplier module last week, the second step last week, and we'll be launching the third step in about a month, which is the final step until now, at least. We'll see how we develop it further. But what we thought initially with the supplier module was, of course, to have some sort of supplier management and supplier mapping in a PLM system, because that's where you are still sort of developing your product. So you're able to do it throughout development instead of, like we mentioned, with the firefighting part where you have everything in the end. So why do you think this will help you in that sense? Why do you think it makes sense to do it in that way? And do you think that sort of for Magasin, and that will be a good process for you to implement?
Yes, definitely. Because again, I think we all know that we might need several different systems when we have to make a digital product passport or when we have to do some reporting, emission calculation. So it's also really about a task force for us where we sit together and try to somehow make a logic and say, okay, what do we expect from our PLM system? And we decided, yes, mapping is a part of the PLM system because the bill of material is there and they belong together in one way or another. And then we can send it further to other systems that do all kind of other stuff with it. So that's really nice that it takes place here. Also, again, when we think about how many other systems we might have to onboard our partners to calculate footprint per product or to ensure forced labor does not take place. So it's also really about looking on what you have and then try to use it as much as possible. And there will come a limit because I think Delogue will not be able to solve all our legislation requirements. But to storage the data about the product will already be super important. And then we can all see who we decide to continue working with to get the final compliance for legislation.
You're definitely touching upon, I think, something that everybody's looking into right now is that, what is the tech stack going to look like to be compliant with the legislation coming our way? How are we, in the end, going to have the digital product passport, and which solutions are going to be a part of that, so to speak?
Yes, definitely, because I think it's also a critical time to not overload your own organization with onboarding many different systems and your suppliers and your colleagues and all of that. So we also decide to really take a breath, take it slow, use the resources we have. Of course, search the market for other right providers. So we already have favorites, but we're going to press on the button when we see that now is the right time and now is the urgency, without being too much of a firefighter situation, which I think it will come. But we're ready, putting the helmets on.
It seems like, the fashion industry is always ready for firefighting.
Yeah, exactly. That's the core of our nature. Like we all say, it's only clothes we are making. We have to remember that. But
exactly. Exactly. So if we just like in the end, summing everything up, any advice that you could give other than all of the other things that you've of course already elaborated, anything that you can sort of say, well, if there is somebody sitting watching now, how do I get started? Maybe we haven't already started yet. There is coming some legislations, we have some suppliers we work with, but where do I start? What's your advice?
I think the first step is to really talk internally with the product development team, also with the management board, because at the end, everyone has to accept that there will come some extra tasks into everyone's tasks. That's how CSR is integrated the best way, right? That everyone takes a little part of a task, sit together, define what you think is important for you as a brand when you look at your customers or your retail partners, owners, all kind of stakeholders. Try to find the core of that and look at the legislation, but there also talk a lot with all different kind of associations everywhere where you can sit and network. It feels overwhelming to take time out from the calendar and sit somewhere. It does. So of course, be realistic, but it gives you so much, and it gives some confidence, and it clears some question instead of that you receive a newsletter from Eurocommerce or whatever, and you get an attachment of 52 pages where the requirement is standing in. It's better time given to go 1.5 hours out, drink a coffee with some other people that sit in the same situation and discuss how you interpret it and how you understand. Because in the networks where we always said, we always noticed that this dialogue helps a lot, because it's really a lot on, I actually understood it a total different way. Well, I think it was that way. And then we all reach out to the sources we have, and we get a common sense out of it. So really spare some time for networking internally and externally, and then not get stressed, but try to make, like you say, get started in small steps and try to make it common sense for your own brand and your own team you sit in.
That is good advice, Anja. Thank you so much. That's good advice. I'm not seeing any questions, so either we have answered everything, or you're still welcome to come with some questions for now. I would just like to take the opportunity to, at the end of this, to just do a little bit of PR for our upcoming event. 12th of May, we will have our big event, Tech Threads, in Vega. I'm looking so much forward to it, and I'm very lucky that Anja as well has agreed to be on stage, which is going to be amazing. So if you do not have your ticket already, just pop into our website, and it is there as well. I just wanted to give a brief of who is going to come, small insights. The event is with the intention of elaborating on operational excellence. And I think that is something that is filling up everybody's day a lot. How do we become operational excellent in our daily life? So we have filled the stage with a lot of people who will elaborate on this, brands, experts, advisors, and so on. And of course, as Anja also mentioned, in terms of finding the right solutions to help you on your journey of figuring out how to be compliant with especially the digital product passport, we have aligned ourselves with 18 partners who will join us on the day, and that you can get to meet, and they will also be able to go on, they have a stage, some of them, and they will also elaborate on their solutions and bring some of their customers so that you can be inspired of how people are using their solutions as well. Looking very much forward to it. I hope everybody will join as well. I still don't see any Q&A questions, so if nothing else, I would just like to thank you so much, Anja, for joining me today. Always a pleasure to have you. If you have Thank you so much. And if anybody have any questions afterwards, you're always welcome to reach out to us. We'll of course send the recording of today and the presentation as well. And then I just wish everybody a lovely day. Thank you so much.